Hey friends, I have three new rustic 4th of July thrift store makeovers that I am so excited to show you. These turn out so beautiful, so come on and craft with me. My name's Sarah, and welcome to my channel Primroselaneprims. I hope you'll consider sticking around for a while by hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss any future fun DIYs. And now, let's get right to those thrift store makeovers. These first DIY, I'm going to be using these glass ceramic Uncle Sam hats that I found in my local Goodwill. They were $3.99 for both of them, which I thought was an amazing deal. These look handmade, hand painted. They're absolutely beautiful. And they have this deep kind of bowl in the top, and I thought these would make perfect 4th of July candles. So I ran to my local Dollar Tree and I grabbed a 3-pack of the votive candles. Now this is the apple cinnamon ones. I picked this one for two reasons. One, I love the smell, and two, it's red, but they have a lot of different scents or even unscented in colors you could choose from. And as you can see, the wicks on these pull out really, really easily. So I just pulled out two of them, and I'm going to use a dab of hot glue to secure them right down in the center of my little ceramic hats. That will just hold it in place for when I pour the wax in. Then I'm taking all three of my votive candles and I'm going to put them inside of this wax melting container I have. Now this is my container I got from Amazon for melting wax, but you could also use an old pot, maybe a thrifted one. Just make sure it's nothing you ever want to put food in again. And on low heat, just melt all three of the votive candles down. It took me about 10 minutes or so to melt all three. And then slowly pour the candle wax into the container. This is such a fun, budget-friendly way to create candles out of pretty much any kind of glass jar that you find. So keep your eye out at thrift stores for cute little containers that would make adorable candles. Once your wax cools and hardens, trim your wicks down, and here you go. You have a budget-friendly, adorable candle for 4th of July. For this DIY, I'm going to be using this wooden Uncle Sam's hat. Now, I've actually had this one in my craft stash for a little while. I picked it up a while back, and I knew I wanted to do this over for 4th of July. And it was already painted, but the paint was just a little too pristine for me because I want to go for that rustic vintage look. So with my sandpaper, I'm going to go through and sand this hat and the paint down. I'm going to scratch up that paint. I'm going to focus on the edges and just give it that nice rustic, primitive, vintage feel. Once I have it sanded to my liking, I'm going to go with my Waverly Antique Wax. This is from Walmart. And I'm going to just dry brush my antique wax all around the edges and all those places where I scratched up that paint to distress this and make it look like an older piece. I want to distress, I want to focus on my edges because, of course, when you see something that's older and worn, the edges are always hit the hardest. So I always like to focus on the edges. But as you can see, when you go over top of your piece with that antique wax, you can see how all those places you scuffed up the paint with the sandpaper, it just really soaks in that wax and it deepens the color of the original paint, and you get those little darker spots where the scratches are, and it just gives it that nice vintage look. And I think that blue is turning out gorgeous. Next, I'm going to take these wood cutout stars. These are from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use 5 of them to be the stars on my little Uncle Sam hat. Now I'm going to go through with my antique wax, and I'm going to once again just dry brush some of the antique wax onto the wooden stars. And I'm going to start from the outside edge of the wooden star and just draw my antique wax into the inside. So from the outside of the star to the inside. It just darkens up those edges a little bit, gives it a little bit of that antique look. Now, once I have all of my stars done with my antique wax, I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue and secure them right down into my hat. And if you're enjoying this video, I hope you'll consider giving it a like. And if you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future fun, budget-friendly DIYs for around the home. Next, I'm going to take this 1.5-inch wired ribbon. Now this ribbon came from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to make a really simple 2-looped bow for our little Uncle Sam's hat. I'm going to use a thin piece of twine to tie this bow off in the center. Then I'm going to dovetail the ends. Now to dovetail your ends, just fold your ribbon in half and cut at a diagonal towards the outside edge. Just gives your bow a nice finished look. Then fluff your loops out. Next, I have this little rusty jingle bell and star pick. I'm going to pull off one of the little pieces of it, and I'm going to hot glue it down right here to go underneath my bow. Then I'm going to finish it off with a rusty star right in the center of my bow. Now to attach this, I'm going to want to use a pretty generous amount of hot glue. Then I'm going to put a good generous amount right on top of it as well to hot glue my bow down. And last but not least is the rusty star. Now I get the rusty stars. You can order them off Amazon. Factory Direct also has a lot of pip berries and the rusty stars too at a pretty decent price. So here is how our little thrifted Uncle Sam hat is looking. The last thing I want to do is I'm going to take these rub-on transfers from the Dollar Tree. Now I've used this pack quite a bit, but it's alphabet and numbers, and I'm going to use the large numbers in this set to put 1776 on the hat. Now, the only problem I'm running into is that there's only one number of each, so I needed a second 7. So necessity is the mother of invention, so I'm going to take the 2. And I'm going to put it upside down here, and I'm just going to trim off part of that bottom edge to make our 2 a 7. It'll be slightly different from the other one, but that's okay. I think it gives it a little bit of that rustic touch, being slightly different, and offset the numbers a little bit. Now, if you've never used these are so simple and easy. You just peel off the back, place them where you want them, and then use something to rub the backing on. You can use like a Cricut scraper. I'm just using my fingernail here on these little small numbers. It doesn't take much, and they just go right on. Easy peasy. Once I have my numbers on, I want them to match that vintage look of the rest of the piece. So once again, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and I'm just going to lightly dry brush over top and around these numbers. We want them to look like they've been there, a little faded, a little old. And here's what we have. This last DIY, I found this Uncle Sam yard stake. It was $4.99 at my Goodwill. It had seen a little better days. It looks like it's definitely been out in somebody's garden. The paint was a little faded, but the worst part was down here at the bottom of this guard stake. It was really dirty. It was gross. The wood was kind of deteriorating a little bit. So I took it and I want to chop it off right here at the bottom of the beard. And I went and grabbed my little handsaw and I started sawing. And I realized real quick that this was going to take a while. If I had been not quite as stubborn, I just would have gone outside and gotten, I don't know, my jigsaw or something and made this a lot simpler. So I'll spare you some of the long sawing details, but eventually I made it through and I cut that old gross end off and tossed it in the trash. Next, I'm going in with, yep, you guessed it, my Waverly Antique Wax that I absolutely love. And I'm going to take and I'm going to dry brush over top of the paint here. As in some of these sections where, like I said, the paint was kind of cracked, it was definitely worn a little bit. I'm going to go right over with this antique wax and just fill in some of that. Make it look like that was exactly how it was supposed to be. All of these little cracks, gouges. You know, this is our little rustic, primitive, vintage Uncle Sam. You know, honestly, the weathering just saved me some sanding, so it worked out. And I'm just going to go all around the edges here, focusing on those edges, the distressing in the center. Make our little Uncle Sam just look absolutely vintage and cute. Next, I'm going to take these red, white, and blue pip berries I had in my stash. Like I said, I put all the rest of this stuff in my stash, but Factory Direct is also a really great place to look for inexpensive, affordable pip berries, rusty stars, jingle bells, that sort of stuff. And I'll thank my sweet friend Randy for reminding me of Factory Direct because I had forgot about it. I'm going to pull off several of these stems and I'm just going to twist them together. I won't need the whole pick for this, just part of it. And then I'm going to take this red and white striped ribbon. I think this maybe originally came from Hobby Lobby. I'm not 100% sure. I don't really remember, but more than likely Hobby Lobby. And I'm just going to make a really simple one-looped little bow and tie it off in the center with a thin piece of twine. And once again, I'll dovetail my ends and just cut towards the outer edge at a diagonal. Now, this bow was just a little too pristine for me. I wanted it to have a more rustic look. So I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and I'm just going to dry brush the antique wax right on my ribbon. I'm going to distress it and make this ribbon tone down that cream color that's in the stripes so that it looks age, tea stained almost. I want my ribbon and my bow to match the vintage look of the rest of the piece. And this is a really simple, easy way just to age fabric or ribbon if you want to make it look more rustic primitive. Now I'm going to use some hot glue to put my pit berries down, but since this is a little thicker, heavier piece, I am going to also use my staple gun just to give it a little additional security. And then I'm going to use my hot glue to put my bow right on top there. And I'll make sure I keep his eyes visible. We don't want to cover our Uncle Sam's eyes. And I'm going to use a rusty star once again to put right in the center of that bow to finish it off. What do you think so far? I think he's looking so cute. The last thing I'm going to do to our Uncle Sam's, I'm going to take these paper tags. Now I get these off Amazon. They're really inexpensive. You get like a whole giant pack of them for just a few dollars. And using my fine tip Sharpie marker, I'm just going to freehand 1776. Then once again, going with my Waverly Antique Wax, I'm going to go over top the paper tag just to make it look aged. And using a little dab of hot glue, I'm going to tuck it in right here behind my bow. Now I'm going to take this thick rusty wire next because I want to be able to attach my Uncle Sam to something. So I'm going to take this 2 pieces of this thick rusty wire and my staple gun, and I'm going to staple gun the wire right to the back on the thick part of the what was originally the yardstick. Only problem is, yep, swing and a miss. I totally missed that, and oh look, I missed again. So yep, that's right, folks. I missed it once again. Somehow, I don't know how. So, third time's a charm. Move it a little closer to myself, and I actually got it stapled on. Then I added the bottom one to the bottom. To err is human, right? Next, I'm going to take a grapevine wreath. And this is more one of the oval-shaped ones. And I'm going to use that rusty wire that I painstakingly stapled to the back of my Uncle Sam, and I'm going to wire him right onto that wreath. Be sure to tuck down those sharp ends so that it doesn't scratch the back of your door or cut anybody. Next, I'm going to take more of these pipberry stems that I had, and these are red, white, and blue, and they have larger stars in them that say America, and I can't remember what the other ones say. But I'm going to put these one facing down and one facing up on the opposite side from where my Uncle Sam is to balance out this wreath. And I'm going to use the long stems that are already on them to kind of wrap around and extra security. I mean, they're already there. You might as well use them. I'm going to leave a little bit of gap there in between too. And then using some smaller rusty wire, I will further wire down these pipberry stems so that they don't go anywhere. Now, once my pipberries are wired in, I'm going to go back in once again with this red and cream colored striped ribbon, and I'm going to make just another simple one loop bow with it. And then I'm going to go in with this 1.5-inch wired ribbon that I used on the other Uncle Sam hat with the blue stripe in the middle from Hobby Lobby. And I'm also going to make a simple one loop bow with it and stack them on top of each other and tie them together with a piece of rusty wire. And dovetail the ends. And then I'm going to wire right in between those, where that gap is in those pitberry wreaths or pitberry stems. I'm going to wire right there in between those to fill in that gap. Now, just like I did with the bow on the Uncle Sam, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and I'm going to go over my ribbon on this bow as well to give it that aged look. And I'm going to go over both the red and the cream ribbon as well as the blue. The cream and the blue, burlap and blue actually. I don't think it's really burlap, it's just kind of a burlappy color maybe. And I'm going to go back in with this little rusty jingle bell pick and I'm just going to pull off one of the rusty bells. And it has a bit of a wire already on the end. So I'm going to take and I'm going to wrap that wire right around the center there to secure it. And I'm also going to use a dab of hot glue to further secure it right in the center of my bow to keep it where I want it. I'm absolutely in love with how this wreath turned out. From an old yardstick that had seen better days to a beautiful wreath for the 4th of July. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's DIYs. If you did, don't forget to give this video a like, maybe share it with your friends, and if you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any future fun DIYs around the home. And until next time, happy crafting, friends.